spear video. Today we're going to be talking about your spear stance, footwork, and then arm position. Okay, the three different positions I'm going to talk about are what I call the Olympic fencer's position, the boxer's position, and goofy foot. Olympic fencer's position, we've got our feet in a line. My front foot is on this line, matches up with the heel of the back foot. I've got my body completely sideways. I've got my imaginary foil in front of me. This gives me a very low profile. It gives me the lowest profile that I possibly can. There's one major problem with the Olympic fencer position. When I put a spear in my hand and I have my arm right in front of me, the spear goes off on an angle. So in order to get this in the front line, I have to move the spear over here. Look at what happens. I now have this side completely open. The advantage to the Olympic fencer's position is that I can shut down virtually any shot that comes to this side of my body. This is a very good block. Your spear is in this line over here. There's nothing coming to this side of the body. What that means is that all of your opponent's shots are now going to come to this side of the body, okay, which kind of gives you only one thing to think about, is to knock him out over here. Most people that use this position in order to defend themselves have to do some sort of slipping or ducking or catching the tip and knocking it down. A lot of people are very effective with this. I used this for 17 years. I stopped doing it just a few years ago because I found that the boxer stance I found to be more effective. The other problem with this position is you're not in a very strong position to fire from, okay? Your hip is not really loaded very well, which is why I go to the boxer's position, which is to move this foot out enough that you can get a 2x4 between your 2 feet. It's not very far, but it brings the hip out just a little bit. The back foot now goes from this perpendicular position, it rotates out with it. And from this position, I'm very well balanced on either foot. If a shot comes to the front side, I move my weight to my right foot and I move the spear out. My back hip is still loaded to then fire from this position. If a shot comes to the backside, I move my weight to my back foot and the spear comes this way. I'm still loaded to fire from this shot. The disadvantage to the boxer's position is I'm no longer completely shutting down the front side of my body, but I find it to be a good trade-off to be in a very good, balanced, more mobile position that you can fire shots out of. It is a more threatening offensively position than the Olympic fencer stance. The third position is what I call goofy foot, which is when you have the opposite foot forward. Okay, there are two theories behind this position. One is that the shoulder of your back hand will be closer to the target, so you will get a little bit more range. I don't believe that to be true, and I will show you why. The other theory to this position is that you can start from further back, step into boxer stance, and fire a shot from there. That is possible. I don't personally find that to be any easier than just taking a longer step from the boxer's or fencer stance. I also don't generally like doing those shots. I find that to be more of a trick shot that can be used in a situation. It's not a normal position. If you're watching this video and wondering what position should you use, again, I prefer the boxer stance. The fencer stance is very common. The goofy foot position is almost never used. Most of the time when I see it used, it's used by a knight who is probably very good at fighting other weapons forms, doesn't practice spear as much, and I believe that their feet are in a very comfortable position based on their other experiences. And rather than teach themselves a whole new situation, rather than teach themselves a whole different set of footwork, they're just using what footwork's comfortable with them. And a lot of times I'll actually find them sort of shift in line. It looks almost like they haven't picked up their spear since the last war, and they're trying to figure out what works for them. It's exactly the same range. So again, maybe you can try this out on your own, and maybe you have some sort of lack of hip flexibility It doesn't allow you to get all the way around. That's maybe a reason you might want to try the goofy foot. The other argument for it is you can take shots from further back. So here I am at my 12-foot mark. This is usually about as far back as I ever stand. Okay, but I am a tall fighter, or maybe there's some sort of situation where I want to sneak out of it. Okay, so again, the argument for goofy foot is that I could stand all the way back here and step up and step right back out. If I do that from a normal stance, I don't find goofy foot to be of any advantage. One thing I will say about standing that far out of the line, it's going to be a very slow recovery. Okay, so if I'm up close, in and out, if I'm further away, you leave yourself out there further. So keep that in mind if you're trying to throw shots from further outside the line. Oh, one last comment on foot position. This is always wrong. That's just a very awkward way to throw a shot. I don't recommend anyone do that. Okay, two things I want you to avoid doing when you spear is to avoid turning that front foot in too far. I do find that most people find it a little comfortable to turn in just a bit. I'm actually naturally pigeon-toed, which means that the lower leg is actually rotated off of my upper leg, so I can turn it in further while my knee still goes forward, whereas most people, the knee would want to move this way. My knee is perfectly comfortable moving this way, so don't watch my feet too much. But if you turn the feet in too much, I call this the cowering position. And what you're sort of relying on is a lot of, you're trying to duck away from the spears. And it's not a very strong position to be in. A lot of people that do this, I find that I get their hips a lot. And the other thing to avoid doing is you can get low, okay, for a little bit of maybe a lower profile, maybe to hide how much length you have, maybe to hide and be less noticeable in the line. And it does sort of cut off some of the angles on the thigh. You can get low, but when you get low, make sure you drop your hips straight down. Because if you get low like this, look at what happens. Everything opens up over here. Okay, so that's a shot right there, so don't do that.